swapping these cutter heads, we'll start with disassembling the casing. Here, there's 4 screws on top you gotta take off and remove the side adjuster, and then lift up the casing. And here we have the little ball bearing that sits on a spring, so be careful not to lose that. Mine popped off, so I had to go looking for it, and it's just held in by a little circlip. And a lot of the things in this video will be self-explanatory, but just to get to the cutter head on these things, there's 2 screws you have to unscrew to remove the casing to get to the knives. And you should probably start with this step. You can see my high-tech bandage from when I nicked myself when I was messing around trying to figure out how to take this thing apart at first. Moving on to the side assembly where the belts and pulleys are, I just had this little pulley puller thing I want to be using to take this off after you undo the set screws on the sides. And after some fiddling, this is after I had tapped out the cutter from the other side, it just comes right out with the bearings and everything. Important note here, I'm putting very light pressure on this thing. It's just finger tight, but that needs to get unthreaded and replaced onto the new cutter head. And moving over to the pulley end of the cutter head, just get yourself a gear puller if it's stuck. Mine was pretty stuck, so this made short work of pulling the pulley off to get everything that I needed. And make sure to not lose the little key that's in the slot. You'll need to replace that when going back into the new one. With the old head out of the machine, it's time to replace the bearings on the new cutter. And I just used a little assembly lube in hopes that the bearings would fit a little easier. I just had some impact sockets that happened to fit over the outer race, which is probably not the right way to do it, but it worked in this instance. I just sized them up and essentially then sent them home. With the bearings installed and the pulleys replaced, I realized when I tried to insert it into the machine, the knives made the cutter too big, so it wouldn't actually fit through the slot. So I had to take I don't even know how many are on there, probably like 50 cutters off in hopes that the whole cutter would fit. And then after taking the knives off, I wound up putting the cutter into the fridge to get a little frosty in hopes that it would shrink a little bit and actually fit through the hole. And with the Shelix head nice and frosty, I took a can of MAP gas to heat up the body of the planer in hopes to expand the space where the bearing slides through, along with the cutter head. So the idea here is that the frozen cutter head shrunk a little bit, and the MAP gas opens up that space to allow me to get the cutter in easier, which didn't exactly turn out to be the case, but it might have helped a little bit or not. Who knows? I got it in eventually. And I apologize for the angle. It was just one of those things where I was really focused on just getting that cutter in there since it didn't want to fit when everything was, room temperature. And this step took a good amount of wrestling to get the cutter in. It seems that the Shelix head is just slightly bigger than the opening, or at least the slots where the knives attach wind up catching on the where the bearing fits in. So on mine at least, I wound up scratching that section up a little bit, but in the end, I don't think it really matters. Once the bearing's driven home, the plate actually holds the whole assembly in, so there's no way that thing's going to move or slide or jiggle in there whatsoever. With the bearing seated, it's time to reinstall that back plate as well as the brake for the cutter head. So what I did earlier was I put the last screw in and I realized I didn't have enough space to get it in there. Just simple reinstall with the one screw and the spring. And after all that, it's just time to replace all the pulleys and the belts. Just to make sure you put the set screws back on and tighten them. Just get everything together. And moving to the other side of the machine, I took off all these gears and the chains off camera because they were just gunky and gross. So to reinstall everything, I'm using some regular grease, automotive grease. I decided to clean up the crusty sawdust grease that was on there and then replace with the new grease. I fiddled around putting this back together until I realized that there are two screws that hold this assembly together. And I think it was 4 other spacers you have to pre-install to get it held together, so you can then just install the entire thing on the machine. And this is just reinstalling the gears exactly how they came off. I took a bunch of pictures when I disassembled it. That usually helps me figure out how to get stuff back together or how it was originally. This is just a matter of turning the gears and lining them up with the keys to slide on. And they're also held in with some circlips, so it helps to have a little pair of circlip pliers. I have a cheap pair that's lasted me for years, and it works just fine. And this was essentially the last step before reinstalling everything. After the gears were on, replace the little catch tray, replace the casing, and fiddle with the height adjuster. One thing I had to note is I wound up gluing the ball bearing temporarily to the spring. And here are just some detail shots of kind of everything I had laid out, everything that I used in comparisons. The cutter heads actually come with a different sized nut to replace. And here is the Shelix head installed in the body. It's a shot of my table. I have these little blocks that the whole planer sits on. And reinstalled and all put together on my flip top table. I didn't do a sound comparison between the straight knife cutter head and the Shelix one. The motor sounds about the same volume as the original one, but when the wood engages, this one cuts so much quieter. It's a very noticeable difference. It feels like it runs smoother and it cuts easier. And I haven't had any problems with the dust collection clogging so far, but I only just installed it. But so far, so good. I'm pleased. It was an adventure. Definitely a good learning experience. And I haven't seen one of these videos, one of these instructions, rather, on how to replace a head in this particular model. So I'm hoping you get something out of it. If you want more detail on any of the steps, feel free to send me a comment or reach out via here or Instagram. Thanks for watching.